In this video, we will discuss some options and show you some examples of editing your dimensions and also editing your dimension styles for dimensions that have been already placed or dimensions that you're wanting to place. So on this first example here, let's say I just want to edit some text in this dimension. So I'll zoom into this dimension, and let's say I don't want the actual length of it, I just want to type in whatever number that I want to place. So if I go to my drawing workflow and I go to the annotate, I can go to my edit text tool and simply select that text. And right now it has a star, and I can override that if I wish to do that. So if I wanted to type in 2 at 20 feet, and all I have to do is left click out on the screen to accept it, and you'll see that it applies that text that I placed in there. Let me put a space in between each one of those, and then I'll apply it, and it overrides the text that's in there. So if you need to edit text, that's what you can do. Now if I want to change that back to the actual length of that particular dimension, we will go to the edit text tool, select that text, and then swipe through that text and put in a star and left click to accept it, and it'll actually put the actual length back in there. So that's editing a dimension. Another way to edit text, let me go ahead and hit F4. Let's say we had all these dimensions here tied together, and I want to break those out into individual dimensions. This is just another way to edit those dimensions. Well, underneath my Home tab, if I go to my groups and I click on this little down arrow right here for my drop element, I will go through here and select the drop element tool. This allows me to go through here and drop an element to its individual pieces or text or dimensions or whatever element that I'm selecting. So like for this example here, if I want to drop these dimensions, I can come in here and toggle on that dimension, and you'll actually have two different options. You have segments and to geometry. If you drop it to the geometry, it's going to bust that dimension all into its individual pieces, and it will no longer be a dimension. So I don't want to do that one. I'm going to select the one that says two segments. That way it breaks this string of dimensions that are tied together into individual dimensions. So if I select that string of dimensions, since they are tied together and they're all highlighted, and I select it, and I'll do the same thing for this one here. And now if I hit the F4 key to clear it out, you'll notice if I select these dimensions now, they're all individual dimensions and they're not tied together. So if you ever need to edit those dimensions and bring them down to their individual dimensions, that's what the drop element tool will allow you to do. So let me go ahead and do a fit view. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the dimension styles. So right now, whenever we come up to the MoDOT CAD detailing standards, and we go to the whichever ribbon that we want to select, and we go to general annotation, and I select this one that says dimension small decimal for this example, it looks at the default that's out there underneath our DGN library for that dimension and loads up all the styles for that. Well, there may be times where we need to do something different for a dimension, maybe before or after its place. For this example here, we're going to do it before we place the dimension. So if I come in here, I can click on this little icon underneath my element dimensioning tool that says dimension style, or I could go back to my drawing workflow, go to the annotate, and underneath dimensioning, you have this little down arrow right here, and you can select dimension styles this way. And this will show you all the dimension styles that are set up. Now, since this one here has been used in the file, it's going to be bold. So now if I come in here, I can select that dimension style, and you're going to see a lot of different options underneath here for geometry, units, the text, the symbology of it, and also some advanced settings for it. Let's say for this example here, I want to change my fit options. Right now it's set to Terminator moves first. Let's say I want to force my Terminator to always be inside, no matter how big or small the dimension is. So if I change that, of course this will show up in blue. Now if I come up here and I use my dimension linear tool and I try to dimension something, if I go to this point, you'll notice that if I zoom in here, you'll notice that no matter how big or small the dimension is, it's going to force those terminators to be inside. If I would change that back, the terminator moves first, you'll notice that you'll see the text will be forced outside until it gets so big, and then it will go through there and change it accordingly. So that's just one example where I can come in here and force my terminators to always be inside, like what it's doing right now. Or let's go through another example. Let me go ahead and change that back. Let's say our units. Let's say I want to show secondary units, because a lot of times whenever you dimension stuff, you may want to put the actual length of the dimension and then maybe put some text below here for like rebar or channelizers or something like that. So this is where you can come in here and actually turn this on, and that particular text that's below your dimension line will be associated to the text. So let me go ahead and do an undo to undo that dimension. I have this one here turned on now. I'll left click on the first one, left click on the second point, figure out where I want to drop it off at, and now I'm finished. Or I could keep going if I wanted to. But then if I use my edit text tool, I can come in here and edit that text. Just make sure you select this text and not this one. And now I can come in here and type in whatever wording that I want. And I'll just put in 2 channelizers at 20 feet. And then just go out onto your screen to left click to accept it. And it places that text accordingly. But the good thing about that is that text on the top and the bottom is associated to that dimension. So if I ever manipulate that dimension, let's say I go back to the Home tab and I use my Modify tool, you'll see that's going to modify with it. Another example would be, let me zoom into this arc down below here. Let me go ahead and turn off secondary units. Let's say on my angle format. Right now it's set to angle, so if I try to dimension this arc, let me come in here and select this one that says dimension angle. And let me go ahead and select the one that says arc size. Right now if I try to dimension this, you'll see that it's going to try to dimension the angle. Well, maybe that's not the value that I want. Maybe I want the actual length of it. Well, I can come in here and change my angle format from angle to length. And now if I try to dimension something with an angle, it's actually going to give me the length of it, like what I'm doing right now. So that's another option where you can come in here and modify this format if you wish to do that. And there's a bunch of other stuff that you can look at if you wish to kind of override those dimensions. But that's just another way you can come in here and modify those dimensions before they're placed. Now the good thing about this is, let's say I want to use the secondary units or whatever option that I want to change. If I have these checked on, let's say the show secondary units, and then we'll use this angle format as length, and I close down my dimension style, anytime I come up here and use my dimensioning tools, it's going to use whatever dimension settings that I previously set. So if I come in here now and I use my dimension linear, and I try to dimension this point, go to this point, and go down, you'll notice that it's going to have those secondary units because I changed my dimension style. So if you ever go in there and edit your dimension style, the next time you use your dimensioning tools, it's going to look at those settings that you have for that particular dimension style. Now, if you go back into your MoDOT CAD detailing standards, and of course you go to general annotation and you select one of these, it's going to reload it back to the MoDOT defaults that's set underneath the DGN library. So if I select it now, and I were to go back to my dimension styles, and I'll just load it up through this icon this time, you'll notice that your secondary units is now turned off, and of course your angle format is now set back to your angle versus your length. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you ever change your dimension style and you want to keep using that, change your dimension style and then simply go back to your drawing workflow and go to your dimensioning tools and load your dimensioning tools that way. That way it keeps your predefined changes that you did for that dimension style intact. The last thing that I was going to show you is, let's say I want to apply some of those dimension style changes to previously placed dimensions. You can very easily do that. So if I go back to my dimension styles, and let's say I want to turn on show secondary units, and I want to change, let's say, my geometry to, we'll do something a little bit different this time. Instead of filled arrowheads, I will do open, just to kind of show you a couple of different options here. So let me close that out. Close that. There's an option underneath your dimensioning tools that you can change your dimension, which is this one right here. It's change dimension. And what it will do is you'll say which dimension style that you want, and that's the one that we have loaded, so that's the one we're going to change. And now if I come in here and I can select these dimensions, and it's going to change those accordingly. So if I select this one, it changes it. So that's a way you can come in here and change your existing dimensions to match whichever style changes that you had for that dimension style. And you could do everything in the file if you wish. I don't really recommend that, but you could do that also to where you could select all your dimensions and apply it to all the dimensions that are out there. So those are some examples of changing your dimensions. You can simply edit the dimension text. You can drop the dimensions if they're tied together, and editing dimension styles for dimensions that you want to place or existing dimensions that have been placed.